Oh, look who it is, the legal eagle. It's Eric Segall and me with my green hat. And you like it a lot. You love my hat.
Well, it's not that I love your hat, Pete. By the way, hello. I hope your parents are okay. I was sorry to hear about their accident.
You were sorry to hear about it?
I was very sorry. I
That's
love your
what I
dad. Your dad's
heard.
like my favorite person. I love your mom too, but your dad's my favorite person.
He's one of your biggest fans. I came to the house and saw your book.
And that's the reason I love him.
Parents were in the ICU, but your book was sitting right there on the counter. I have some question and concern of how you might have been involved.
So even though you're inside, you're wearing a green hat. And I'm
That's
very jealous of your green hat. I will tell you why.
Oh.
Lynn and I, after 3 postponements, finally made it to the United Kingdom over the New Year's. We were supposed to go for a much longer time, but many health issues got in the way. But we eventually went, and it was unbelievably cold. Like, it was unbelievably cold. The high was 33. The low was like 19. It was windy. It snowed a little bit. And I wanted to wear the exact hat you're wearing, except mine was gray. But it was the exact hat. And I put it on, and my wife said, no, you can't do that. That's not allowed. You're not allowed to wear that hat. And I love my wife. Your audience knows how much I love my wife. But I was sad that I couldn't wear that hat over my ears.
Well, listen.
She said, now, if you were Pete Dominic, you could wear it. She said,
I'm separated. I'm single. People, I gotta look good for the ladies love this hat. That's why I'm wearing
my ears. My ears were cold. By the way, why are you wearing a hat inside?
I like to wear hats. I think they look good on me, and it matches with my eyes and my shirt and the lighting. And
you're right. Green shirt, green eyes, green hat.
I wear all green. And also, my hat is generally cold as a bald. It is generally a little colder. My parents' house is not toasty. They're not here. No reason to have, the heat cranked.
Are you in your old room growing up?
That's right. There's been a lot of talk about what happened.
So should we do a session with you? Forget constitutional law and insurrections and the end of the country and democracy forever leaving us. Should we really do
well, it's funny,
Pete, to be back in your old room.
It's so funny because Jeff Jarvis, who I taped with yesterday, had similar questions. I love it. I love this house. I love where I grew up, and my memories of being in this house are filled with love and fun. There were obviously a lot of hard times, whatever, but like this room was my sanctuary. It's a nice house. It's a beautiful view out the back. I'm looking out at a field covered in snow in the woods. So it feels great to be here. I always love being in this home.
I'm very happy for you. Were I in I lived someplace from kindergarten until 7th grade and then 7th grade to high school. Were I in either of those rooms, you'd have to carry me out like a babbling crazy person.
Why? You'd have like there were some bad things that happened there or something?
Well, I had a very normal, reasonable upbringing. But I don't want to go back. I would never want to go back. But now part of it is I grew up in Long Island, and
there you go.
I don't have fond memories of Long Island, so that's part of the problem. Sorry, people in Long Island. I love Long Island. It's just kind of never mind.
I'm in upstate New York, central New York, it's called, to those of us who live here just outside Syracuse. And, it's beautiful here. It's a little gray and cloudy most of the time in this area. And the winters are real cold. But again, back to my childhood memories, winters, we couldn't wait because we were skiers. And so welcome the snow. We're good at driving in the snow. We have very little patience or respect for people who get afraid.
You think you're good driving in the snow. You should see my Georgia friends.
Well, that's what I mean. Like when people in Georgia or anywhere else around, like when they, have a couple snowflakes, they fall on the ground, they lose their mind. Whereas we upstaters, we central New Yorkers, we feel very confident driving in the snow. I've been driving.
Boring the audience with weather talk?
Yes.
Okay.
So let's talk about the University of Arkansas. There's
Jesus Christ.
Dean of law school, less than a week after naming a new dean, University of Arkansas Law School withdrew the appointment, saying on Wednesday the decision was based on feedback from key stakeholders. The appointee, Emily Susky, the legal scholar,
by the way, who I know and is a friend and is an unbelievably great person.
She'd been selected after a lengthy public search, and the university's provost praised her work on medical partnerships to help low-income children when the choice was announced on January 9th.
Can you imagine working for low-income children's health? I mean, how terrible is that?
It's heroic. The feedback that derailed the appointment, members of the state legislature said, was related to her signature on an amicus brief filed with the Supreme Court late last year in support of transgender student athletes.
Yeah. So we're at the point now where state law schools in red states will take away job offers from people already granted them if they sign as one of 17 academics a brief on a very reasonably contested, hotly debated issue that, you know, academics reasonably disagree on, doctors reasonably disagree on. These are all reasonable disagreements about the role of especially trans women in women's athletics. The Supreme Court heard argument yesterday in 2 of these cases. Signing on to an amicus brief, making a point, you know, of law in a case that's hotly contested and won't be unanimous, probably gets you disqualified after you get an offer from a law school. I mean, Pete, we are entering insanity land. Texas A&M told a professor that couldn't teach Plato. Can't teach.
I saw that you can't teach Plato.
Yeah, this is going on in a lot of places, and it is.
Is Plato too woke?
Apparently, I apparently, you know, Plato and Aristotle had a, you know, I don't know, Pete. This is happening in so many places. But this, I have a friend at the University of Arkansas who is a very strong supporter of my blog, Dwarf on Law, and he writes to me all the time about my blog posts and things. He's just a good guy, and I feel so bad for him. I mean, it's just, how can you fire someone because they signed an amicus brief on a case that goes to the Supreme Court where there are 50 amicus briefs on both sides?
Less than a week after naming a new dean, University of Arkansas Law School withdrew the appointment. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders of Arkansas.
Well, that's where we can start right there, obviously.
She supported the decision to withdraw the offer, according to her spokeswoman. Governor Sanders appreciates the University of Arkansas Fayetteville for reaching a common sense decision in this matter in the best interest of students.
You know what's interesting about this? I actually don't agree with the brief. The cases that were argued yesterday, I think, are legitimately difficult cases. They involve state laws that ban transgender women from playing on women's sports. One case, this is just yesterday, one case, or maybe it was 2 days ago. Sorry, time is running crazy right now. One of the women was from a state where she said, you know what? I don't want to bring this lawsuit anymore. I don't want to play any more sports. I'm just going to play club teams. Let me dismiss the case, which means the case should be dismissed, but the court is probably not going to dismiss it, which is insane. The other case comes out of West Virginia, where there is one trans woman in the entire state who wants to play on a women's sports team. Both of those states, as well as my home state of Georgia, bar all trans women from playing on sports teams. I would not vote for such a law, but the Supreme Court is going to uphold such a law, saying states have the right to make that determination. There's no suspense. That's what the court is going to hold. And frankly, it's a close call to me, but I think that as a constant, again, I would not vote for that law. I think it's a stupid law. I don't think it's unconstitutional. And the reason for that, real quickly, Pete, just so we can get out of the way, is we already allow high schools and colleges to separate men's and women's sports. Men are not allowed to play on women's sports teams, period. And that's obviously constitutional for a zillion reasons. So now the next question is, okay, if you have a blanket rule that no men can play on women's sports teams, what about a trans woman who was born with male biology but now identifies as a woman? Now, this is a problem that is way over. There aren't that many examples of this. But I think a state is allowed to say, no, we're just going to have a general rule. If you're a biological male, no matter how you identify, you can't play on women's sports teams. I wouldn't vote for that law, but I see no part of the Constitution where that law violates, and the court's going to uphold it. My only point here is, though, a lot of smart people disagree with me. A lot of smart people agree with what the dean candidate said. And the idea that she could be fired for filing a public brief. I mean, what are we doing?
The Supreme Court on Tuesday seemed likely to uphold laws that prohibit transgender women and girls from competing in women's and girls' school sports team after nearly 3.5 hours of arguments in a pair of cases from Iowa and West Virginia. A majority of the justices appeared to agree with the states that laws can remain in place, even if it was not clear how broadly their ruling might sweep. Well, you know,
so Mike Dorff posted yesterday on Dorff on Law a very good piece saying, yes, the plaintiffs are going to lose. The laws are going to be upheld. And even Mike admits maybe they should be, but the reasoning matters. It could be a very broad decision. trammeling trans rights across the board, or it could be which I don't want, or a very narrow decision saying this only applies to women's sports. It applies to nothing else. And states have a right to have a general rule, because making exceptions on a case-by-case basis is just too hard.
The amount of attention that this issue gets is outrageous and unhelpful and disproportionate and unrepresentative. It's just a preposterous issue that, though, animates fundraising, gets votes, gets ratings in media, and now is being argued at the Supreme Court for like one person.
Yes, and one person. It really is one person right now. I mean, now on the other hand, like 24 states, something like that, have these kinds of laws. But let's just step back for a second. We could have a robust policy debate on this, but I don't want to, and you don't want to. Let's move on to other things. As a constitutional law matter, once we accept that states can prohibit boys from playing on girls' sports teams, and we all agree that's a constitutional rule for 99% of boys, the 1% or less than 1% of trans women who identify as boys, I do feel, I feel for them, and I think it's been very hard to be trans, and but I don't think a state has to, as a constitutional law matter, make an exception for them when we agree the law is valid 99.9% of the time. So I wish this issue would just stop percolating. There are many. I'm not denigrating the importance of this issue to the people involved, but the people involved is a very small number.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said. There are several other cases and arguments that are going to be heard, a few of which that you definitely want to discuss, which is why we're here talking today, of course, with Eric Segall. And there's just a lot happening in the world that we want to ask in terms of whether or not it's constitutional or legal, or what the Constitution says about it. What do you want to do? Because I feel like
well, there's so much to talk about. I mean, it's not a case, but Donald Trump.
Name a few issues that we should be talking about that are. Sure. Whose legality is very questionable, and just tick through a few, and then we'll dig.
There are two big election law cases. Don't ask me their names. There are two big election law cases the court's going to decide this term that are really big. One is, I think, pretty obviously. I mean, one is just dumb. Republicans are claiming that mail-in voting is somehow unconstitutional or illegal. You can't not mail-in voting, but you can't count ballots after Election Day. There's nothing in the Constitution that prevents states from counting ballots 3 or 4 days after the election. There's no federal statute that prohibits that. It is a really dumb case. If it wasn't for the Trump immunity case that happened a few years ago, I would say there's no chance the court is going to side with the Republican. They took this case so the Republican Party can lose a case. The court likes to do that. Every few years, the court takes a case it doesn't care about, where they can say, look, we voted against the Republican Party. I think that's going to be this case, Pete. But if it's not, if they hold that that states are not allowed to count ballots after Election Day, which is what Trump wants them to do, if they hold that way, I don't know. Then really all is gone. I mean, all is lost anyway. But it's an obscene, obsequious, stupid argument. The much more important case, though, is, and this is big, and we have to unwind this a little bit. The Voting Rights Act, under circumstances, requires states to district in a way that requires majority-minority districts. Districts where a minority is likely to elect a person of color. And the Voting Rights Act has been understood to allow this since 1965, basically. And it's been an incredibly important law. Now, the Supreme Court already gutted half the Voting Rights Act in the infamous Shelby County case. This is a different part of the act. And I think the court is going to say, beyond all reason and all logic and all humanity, that the Voting Rights Act, which is an act passed by Congress, cannot trump the Constitution. And the Constitution prohibits the consideration of race in redistricting in any way, shape, or form. If they do that, the southern states are going to go back to like 1950s era districting. It's bad enough as it is now. It's going to get much, 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 much worse. And this is a huge case, Pete. All the election law folks will tell you this is a huge freaking case. And to put it in non-legal terms, from 1788 to 1965, we allowed white people to stop people of color from voting. From 1788 to 68, it was because they couldn't vote legally under the law in most places. And then we used literacy tests and violence and personality tests. That's, if anybody watched, that's when Martin Luther King and Lyndon Johnson get together in 1964. They get the Voting Rights Act passed. It's an incredible success. Black people can vote again. And part of the success was saying to states, you can't redistrict blacks out of existence when it comes to voting. And you have to have some districts that are safe havens for black voters to elect black people. And that's how it's been understood forever. And the court this term may say, nope, no longer. States cannot take race into account at all. And if they do, it's unconstitutional. And that is probably maybe the most important case this term, although we have tariffs. I think the court's going to rule against Trump on tariffs, but I'm not sure. But we had the tariffs case. And we have a big campaign finance case, which is going to be a disaster, where the court is going to allow super PACs and candidates to basically coordinate their spending together.
Oh, no, that seems
awful, right?
I mean, somebody I think just wrote a book about on the anniversary of Citizens United decision and maybe how much damage it's done. But that would sound like it would add to it a bit.
It will. They just want the rich and the money to have as much influence as possible over our elections. I mean, it's just everything. So people should watch out for those voting cases. I think they're really important. Also, it's likely the court will have to eventually wade into. So I think Donald Trump is going to use the Insurrection Act in Minneapolis.
Okay. Well, let's get into that.
Well, that's what a disaster that is. Generally speaking, the president is not allowed to use the military domestically. And the founding fathers fought strongly for that, and it's a rule. But there's a statute, of course, that allows the president to use the military domestically in certain narrow circumstances. So in 1957 or 58, the state of Arkansas says, we don't have to comply with Brown versus Board of Education. It was an illegitimate decision. We weren't a party to the case. We're not going to desegregate our schools. We don't care what the Supreme Court says. We're violating what the Supreme Court says. And Eisenhower, a Republican who is no friend of desegregation at all, nevertheless sent in the troops, the National Guard in that case. It could be National Guard or the military. Sent in the troops to make the governor of Arkansas comply with constitutional law. During the Rodney King riots, the governor of California asked the president to send in troops. Part of the law of the Insurrection Act says, part one is, if the governor asks, the president can send in troops. That makes sense to me. That's a good thing. When the governor of California said, please help us, the city is burning, we sent in the troops. That's good. What ICE is doing is ICE is acting, in my opinion, ICE is acting in a way in Minneapolis that is causing a crisis. And then the president's going to say, we can't enforce federal immigration law because of the crisis in Minnesota, and we have to send in either the National Guard or the troops to do it. But it is ICE that is creating the conditions on the ground.
Right.
And I suspect this is a, exercise for sending in troops to many, many, many blue cities. And people should see this for what it is. Donald Trump wants to eventually use the Insurrection Act, to send the military into probably most blue states. Now, one thing that people get confused about, Pete, that does not mean martial law. The fact that he's sending in the military it's not the same thing as saying, courts are closed and martial law is imposed.
That's an important delineation.
It is. And some people get that confused. Although Lincoln declared martial law during the Civil War, most legal scholars think that was ineffective and wasn't effective until Congress ratified it a year and a half later. Because when we talk about martial law, what we mean is the writ of habeas corpus gets suspended so that if the executive arrests you, you have no recourse. You have no court to go to. You can't file a writ of habeas corpus. You can't challenge the legality of your confinement because the courts are not open. The Constitution says the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless in cases of rebellion or invasion. But it is up to Congress. It's in Article 1, not Article 2. So the great weight of authority is that the president has no power to declare martial law. So sending in the troops is not martial law. I want to be clear about that. I don't know if Trump knows that difference, but we have to recognize that difference.
Well,
go ahead. Sorry.
I just not outside the legal argument. The argument that everybody is making is that the way that will play out, and what he wants is to use the Insurrection Act to declare the elections should be canceled or postponed. Today, he said that we shouldn't even have I don't think we should have elections. I don't think we should.
By the way, he has no power to do that. None. Zero.
No power to
suspend elections.
Could you?
Not a thing.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because the strategy seems to be that there's violence in the streets. We need to pause. We need to. I mean, and you see this around the world when they don't have elections or they have fake elections,
right,
or they suspend as a result of.
Our Constitution says that it is Congress's duty. Well, the states regulate the time, manner, and place of elections subject to federal law. Federal law meaning Congress. It's so, I want to scream. All those Republicans, all those conservatives complaining about Obama's overuse of power, which Obama did. I'm not.
You don't need to talk about the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore.
I know, but Pete,
pointing out hypocrisy.
They were so worried about the president, executive agencies running wild because EPA might regulate too many emissions.
See, that's the thing that people too often do what you're doing with political analysis and point out the hypocrisy. And I honestly think that they fail to believe that they're not principled. They just want power. So they don't care whether or not what the federal government does or does not do, as long as they're in power of it. So
you're right.
You can have more government or less government, as long as they're in charge of the government everywhere, then it doesn't matter how much power it wields.
Every president since World War II has taken more power or tried to take more power than previous presidents. Everyone, Democrats, Republicans, no exceptions. But that's not the same that those incremental steps, which happened. Obama did it, Clinton did it. I'm being nonpartisan here. But those incremental steps don't compare to the leaps of executive authority that this president is exercising. It's apples and oranges. It's not the same. We're in a whole new world. And Pete, I don't know if we can go back unless, so I talked to the LA Times today because they were asking me about the Insurrection Act.
Oh.
And one of the things I said to them, which I hope they print, I think they will, or may have printed already, is what all of this makes me want to do is scream at the top of my lungs. I'm going to curse. Can I curse? It's a family show. Where the fuck is Congress? Where the fuck is Congress? Because, and here's why I say that. Not only is the president taking power away from Congress every single day of his term, but these Republicans in Congress don't understand their love affair with him is going to end. All of Trump's love affairs end. Well, none of them stay. None of them.
Let me ask you a couple questions about where is Congress. That's okay. Somebody in the chat said that with all my green, I look like my friend Ronnie said I look like the Notre Dame mascot.
I was thinking more you look like asparagus.
So where's Congress? Well, Congress voted to make sure that the Department of Justice release what's called the Epstein files, and they haven't done that. The other day, the Senate actually passed some law that would make sure that the president couldn't just go bombing countries. Something about the War Powers Act or something like that. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I didn't. I thought they didn't get that done. I thought it was missed by one vote. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well, now he's got Josh Hawley to reverse. I'm going to look it up. But my question is, even when Congress acts to rein in the executive branch, I'm not sure that they're following the law.
It could make a big difference, Pete. Congress could pass a law tomorrow saying the president is not allowed to. They could amend the Insurrection Act to say before the president is entitled to send in troops to American cities or states, he must follow certain steps, for example. And he'd have to do that. He would have to. Now, again, I understand what people are thinking. They think, Eric, are you insane? Republicans aren't going to do this. But I'm here to say that these Republicans must know it's only a matter of time. I mean, the blue states. But eventually, Trump will turn on them. He always does. Leaving aside the question of, does Congress want any power left? Like, what do they not want power? Because at the end of the day, if they don't fund it, the president can't.
The only way they get and keep power is to align with Trump, as evidenced by, you're right, the two Republicans flipped defeating war powers resolution after intense Trump pressure. So Josh Hawley was one of them of Missouri. Trump made fun of him and called him a cuck and threatened him or something, whatever, who knows. And so what they want is to stay on the side of power. Again, I think that's the easiest way to understand it. They don't want the kind of power needed to challenge.
Short-term thinking.
They can only keep power if they keep daddy happy. Otherwise, they can resign. I mean, a lot of them are quitting because they can't play the game any longer. They don't, I mean, then you have a couple of congressmen, including Thomas Massey, Republican, who's like, I don't want to protect these pedophiles.
I mean, Pete, I would have thought that longstanding members of Congress with power, like Josh Hawley, like Senator Cruz, like, those kinds of folks, certainly Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio. Whatever happened to these people, because it is Congress. I mean, we can talk about the court, but it is Congress that is the main institution in America that is losing authority, losing power, losing credibility. And how can you be part of an institution for 20 years, 30 years, 15 years, 16, whatever it is? I'll also say something else. This guy, Steve Miller, I mean, I've now heard him say like 15 times that ICE policemen, or whatever we call them, ICE people, have absolute immunity for the acts they. No, they don't. No, they don't. And when will the media correct them? Like, I don't understand.
Why? What he's saying? What they have absolute, no matter what they do.
No matter what they do, they have absolute immunity.
Well, in a way, they do, because Trump will pardon them, no matter who they are. No,
you can. I guess. I mean, well, okay, fine. Let's talk about something more interesting.
Well, can I have one more question?
Yes.
Specific question.
Yes.
Let's see. Here it is. The commander-in-chief has now threatened to defund blue states. We are hearing from Mayor Mamdani and other blue state leaders. He's not the leader of the state, of course, but of New York City, most people in the state. Can the executive branch just say you don't get federal funding? Doesn't Congress also have to do that?
My understanding is Trump is saying, if you don't help us with immigration and you're a sanctuary city, right, or a sanctuary state, then I'm going to cut off funding to you. Yes. My friend Ilya Somin, Somin, people should look him up, who writes for the Volokh Conspiracy, which is a libertarian conservative blog. Ilya is a law professor at Scalia Law School. He is a libertarian, and he is a good guy. And we disagree a lot, but he is thoughtful. And he has written a lot about how unconstitutional this is. Now, he's right that under current law, it's unconstitutional. No, the president can't do that. What the Supreme Court will do, however, is a whole different question. But I wish people would forget the legality of that for a second. My guess is most Americans in red states have relatives in blue states, or at least have friends in blue states. I mean, I'm just going to assume that. Certainly the Republicans I know around here, even a few of the MAGA ones, have family and friends, in very blue, in New York or California or wherever. This idea that even Ronald Reagan didn't do this. This idea that I am the Republican president for the Republican people, for the Republican states.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even try to hide it. It is just, it'd be worse if he hid it, I guess. But he, as much damage as Reagan did, and as much damage as I think the second Bush did, they at least saw themselves as president of America. He doesn't see himself that way at all. He sees himself as president of people, of a team. He's part of a team. And it's awful. And Pete, I don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do. This Supreme Court is absolutely crazy. It is absolutely nuts. No one thought they'd give Trump the immunity they gave him. No one thought a lot of things they did. And it's who knows? I certainly wouldn't count on the Supreme Court to say it's unconstitutional, even though it is.
Have you read any economic analysis of what happens if the Supreme Court decides that the tariff powers that he's taken are illegal? Have you?
I'm not. I never profess to be an expert on economics. But
have you seen any? I know.
But what I have seen is he'll just do it a different way. There are other avenues for him to impose these tariffs. This is just one way for him to do it. I think the bigger risk, the tariffs are huge, and but my understanding from the economists that I talk to, the Fed Reserve is a much bigger issue. If the reserve comes under political control, which is what Trump wants, so that interest rate determinations are made based on elections.
Yeah. In terms of decisions that he will unilaterally make that could affect the economy, it would seem that if he puts in charge of the Federal Reserve, apparently he's because Jerome Powell's term is going to be up, so he is going to appoint someone, and some sources are reporting that he's planning to appoint a bag of gold to lead.
Well, a bag of gold would be better than Kristi Noem, or would be better than Pam Biondi. I mean, these people have no business. Not to mention Steve Miller, not to mention the Secretary of War. I mean, all of these people have no business in government. None of them have any.
What do we want to say about, if anything, about what's happening in the streets of Minneapolis, specifically with ICE and their searches and seizures, the Fourth Amendment? Show me your papers. Show me. I mean, like Joe Rogan is flipping out. People on the right are flipping out.
Say it ain't so, Joe.
Yeah, saying you can't just go around asking American citizens, especially white ones, for their papers. The guy's white.
So I go back to James Madison. Not a bad person to go back to. He has some relevance to today. And James Madison or Ben Franklin, either one, after they signed the Declaration of Independence, I think it was, someone came to Ben Franklin famously and said, "What do we got? A republic or something else?" And he said, "A republic if you can keep it." James Madison said that the Constitution is and laws in general are parchment barriers. What he meant by that is the Constitution is a piece of paper. It only works if you believe in it. The Russian the Russian Constitution of the 1950s was 10 times better than ours. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of equality, freedom of everything. There was no freedom in Russia in the 1950s. What is happening in this country is the Constitution and laws are becoming parchment barriers. They don't exist. They don't exist because the president doesn't believe in them. And when courts try to enforce them, more times than not, the highest court in the land, supports the president. And I never thought
Yeah, I know.
You know what I was right about, Pete? There was one thing I was right about. I really was. And you argued with me about this at the time.
Oh, here we go.
I'm sorry.
Guys,
I would ask people, do you believe in Michael Jordan? And they would say, yeah, I saw him play. He was great. And I would say, at worst, he's the third best basketball player of all time. We can have reasonable debates. But at worst, he's the third. Do you believe in Beethoven? Do you believe in Brahms? Do you believe in Einstein? Yeah. Okay. So these generationally talented people come around. They just do. Not very often, but they come around. Then I say,
me.
Thank you. And Pete, do you believe in Pete Dominic? Yes. See, there you go. Do you believe in Stalin? Do you believe in Hitler? Do you believe in Mussolini?
What does it mean to believe? What do you mean by do you believe in?
I mean, these people actually lived lives that none of us cannot possibly comprehend.
Right.
Millions and millions and millions and millions of people play basketball. Michael Jordan was the best. Just was. He was the best. Maybe he was second best, whatever. There are a lot of people who want to write pop songs, but Elton John, Billy Joel, and Bruce Springsteen are different. They're just different. They're empirically different. My point here was not that we live in 1935 Germany or 1937 Italy or whatever, or at the time of Alexander the Great or whatever, but generational talent and generational threats come around. Stalin killed 10 million Russians. He was a generational threat. I said from 2016 forward, and you argued with me, that Trump was a generational threat. And he is. He's not Ted Cruz. He's not Josh Harlan.
I agree. Yeah.
And
I don't think I don't know what I said when I argued, but he certainly is. If I had any argument, I suppose I didn't believe people would support him enough people would support him to win. But I certainly agree that he's a generational threat. I certainly agree that there's nobody like him in the world currently. And I certainly believe that if you looked into history, you would realize that there's almost nobody like him ever. And
it's like 20 people like him ever. Yeah.
It's a weird thing, too, because he's so fucking stupid. Like almost every other authoritarian dictator was very calculated in all kinds of ways. And, he's just a good salesman and performer. And also, I would also argue to some extent, it's always worth reminding people, like every day, our public education, we've disinvested in public education for a long time. And so we're pretty dumb. A lot of us are really ignorant. And so buy the weird shit that he's selling, or weird shit that anybody's selling.
Can I tell you what just happened in Georgia with education, Pete? I'm sorry to pivot.
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
It's really interesting. And it's exactly what you're saying. So the Georgia Constitution provides to every Georgian the right.
Dominic says, I used to drink when Judge Posner was mentioned by Segall. Now it's when Billy Joel is mentioned. That's a good one, Dominic. Go ahead. Sorry. Talk about Georgia.
I'd rather talk about Posner. Georgia has a law as a part of the Georgia Constitution gives every Georgian the right to, I think it's with adequate public education, an adequate public education. That's what our Constitution says. Last year, Georgia passed this insane voucher law. We've had vouchers forever, but this was a new law that said if school is
Oh, he froze for me.
I'm still going on. Sorry, good. 6,000. I'm good.
You froze just for a minute for me. I don't know about anybody else. Georgia passed an insane election law. Go ahead.
Education law that says if your school is low performing, then the parent at school can get a $6,500 voucher to send their kids to private school. Now, $6,500 doesn't get you any private schools in Georgia. It takes a lot more money than that. So the poor doesn't help the poor at all. It doesn't help the middle class at all. It does help kind of upper middle class students fund their private school tuition. And by definition, this only applies to low performing schools. So what this law does, relevant to your point you made a few minutes ago about education, is it makes public schools that are not doing well do even worse. Like it takes the high achieving students at those schools and gives them money to go someplace else. And it's very intentional. It's to one, destroy public education, and two, reintegrate the state of Georgia. It's resegregate, excuse me. I mean, it's just crazy. And what's ironic about it is the Georgia requires an adequate public education. So when the state of Georgia decides the education is not adequate, what do? They make it worse.
Right. I mean, that's a great example, evidence of exactly what I'm saying. I don't know what's going on with the internet, but maybe I'll punch out because I don't want to have to edit this.
Mine is strong. Can we end on one quick note that I think your audience might like?
Yeah, please.
So tomorrow on Dorf on Law, I have a piece, and it's a counterfactual, which is always not a great thing for scholars to do. But your audience who've been with us for a while knows how much I've ranted about life tenure forever. We're the only country in the world, except Iceland, where our Supreme Court judges have life tenure. We should have a rotation system, like Germany, like India, like all the other countries with very powerful Supreme Courts. They should serve 18-year terms and then rotate off. So here's the counterfactual. Justice Scalia died 10 years ago, February. So we're approaching the anniversary of Justice Scalia's death. Everybody knows McConnell then held the seat open for a year, and that's Obama couldn't name Garland, didn't get a hearing, and then Neil Gorsuch gets that seat. If Antonin Scalia died just 1 year earlier, and he was in terrible health, he was overweight and he was sick. He, by the way, died on a hunting trip funded by people with business before the court. Leaving all that aside, had he died a year earlier, I've asked some people about this. There's no way Mitch McConnell could have had that seat open for 2 years. Obama would have gotten the seat. There's no way we go 2 years for that. So Obama would have gotten that seat, and it would be a liberal. Justice Ginsburg died in September of 2020. September 2020, right before the election. Had she died in January of 2021, just 4 months later, then Biden would have got that pick, and Amy Coney Barrett wouldn't be on the court. And what we'd have, Pete, is a 5-4 liberal majority. All it means if Scalia dies a year earlier and Ginsburg 4 months later, we have.
Why are you doing this?
Because listen to the difference between a 6-3 or 5-4 conservative court and a 5.
I don't want to. I don't want to live in the past. And
this is what changed.
Historical fiction and
abortion is a constitutional right. Affirmative action is illegal. There is no Trump immunity decision. Trump is probably disqualified because of the insurrection under the 14th Amendment. There's no talk about tariffs. There's no talk about the Insurrection Act. All of constitutional law change. All of constitutional law changes. So I ask you, what country? The answer is none. What country would have a system where Supreme Court justices themselves get to decide how long they serve or if they die in office? So it's all luck and timing and political retirements and death, when the difference between a 6-3 conservative court and a 5-4 liberal court is an unconscionably important difference. Again, I want to say it again. Just change those two facts. Yeah. Abortion is a constitutional right. Affirmative action is legal. Trump probably gets disqualified. So many other dominoes fall.
If you were to blame one person for a lot of it, it would be Mitch McConnell, because McConnell holds up the appointment to replace Ginsburg, and McConnell votes against impeachment.
Scalia holds up the
McConnell holds the appointment to replace Scalia, and then votes against impeachment.
And he gets Ginsburg's replacement in 2 months. I mean,
right? Of course, he turned that around.
But we wouldn't have that problem if we had fixed 18-year terms. It wouldn't be a problem.
Oh, that's a good point. Yep.
And I'm not someone who I don't overstate the significance of the Supreme Court, but a lot of times we do that, especially in my business. But I think your audience understands the difference between a 6-3 conservative court and a 5-4 liberal court over the last 4 years would solve more. I mean, I'm not even sure Donald Trump would be president. In fact, Mike pointed out to me that if Scalia died a year earlier, which means Obama names his replacement, then the Scalia replacement would not have been part of the 2016 election.
Right.
And if the Scalia replacement is not part of the 2016 election, I think Trump loses. So, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, you pointed it out. I'm glad you pointed out. It's worth pointing out. And we should always be reminded of it, and how much difference
we need to abolish life tenure. It needs to go away.
Abolish life tenure. And you've been saying that since I met you. That's actually how I met you. I said, "Hi, Eric, I'm Pete." And you said, "We need to abolish lifetime tenure." And I was like, "I'm here for French fries. I just ordered." And you're like, "This is not a fast food restaurant." I'm like, "It is."
Just to set the record straight, we met when you spent 2 hours criticizing Trent Lott for making a racist statement instead of talking about the poverty of Black people in Mississippi. That is how we.
All right, folks. Thank you, Eric, for joining us. As said in the chat, love you, Eric. You're so damn smart. And everybody's very thankful whenever you join us. I appreciate you joining me. Thanks to everybody who watched live. If you're a subscriber of this show, you'll get an email to join us live. Join us for our hangout tonight. And I hope to see you tonight at 8 p.m. Otherwise, I don't know. You're missing out. Eric, thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Bye, everybody.